Hockey fans, welcome back. We're all pumped up right here because this is another episode of Kings of the Rink Stanley Cup Edition. We're here. We're three of the writers from sports-kings.com/Around The Rink. You guys can give us a Twitter follow at our handle. I'm going to see if I can get this directional thing right. Oh, there we go. At ATR Sports Kings is our Twitter handle right there. My name is Joe, and with me today we've got a couple of familiar faces because we just recorded our This Week in Sports podcast, and it's the same guys every week that we got for Kings of the Rink. We got Michael and Calvin. Guys, how you doing this morning?
I feel like I'm in a state of deja vu. Haven't I seen you guys before, like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, something like
Or was
that.
it just me? Maybe it was that coffee. I don't know.
Sure you didn't put anything extra in that little Colombian coffee you got there?
I may have driven it straight through the heart of Dublin. I'm not too sure yet.
Whoa, that was actually like a creepy good Irish accent there really quick.
That was
Top
crazy.
of the morning, Juliet from Boston.
So like I said, we're in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals right now. Hockey fans all around the world are going crazy because the Los Angeles Kings, I'm not exactly sure how they're doing it, but somehow they're up 3-0 over the New York Rangers through the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup Finals.
I'm sorry to be laughing at you, Kelvin, but that's funny.
The LA Kings pulled off the remarkable feat of going through the first 2 games with no lead in regulation or overtime or whatever. The first time they had more goals than the Rangers was when they won the games in overtime. And that gave them the 2-0 lead, both wins at home in the Staples Center. And then last night they go out to MSG, Madison Square Garden in New York, and they just kind of, ran the Rangers 3-0. Big shutout for Jonathan Quick, who has been, getting a little bit of crap for not being the best goaltender in the world during the playoffs. But the Kings, we'll start with Michael on this one. I don't really know if any. I don't think we expected the Eastern Conference to beat the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup, but I'm still a little bit surprised by how dominant the Kings have been in this series.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are, but at the same time, you have to remember, this LA Kings team is a lot more battle-tested than this Rangers team was. You think about being down 3-0 to a San Jose team that can score from any angle, catching a lucky break when Marc-Edouard Vlasic went down. And then you go off and you play an Anaheim team that was just chugged from top to bottom, arguably just as deep of a team as they were, especially when you got a guy like Ryan Getzlaf teaming with Corey Perry, who's arguably the greatest 1-2 punch in the sport today, and taking that to 7 games. And then you go through the defending Stanley Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks in 7 games. Battle-tested. Now, that's not to say that the Rangers didn't go through a battle on their own. But like the Kings, they got some lucky breaks too. I still like to believe that if Carey Price would have been in goal in Montreal, that series would have been a lot different. Having said that, I still think that we haven't heard the last of the New York Rangers, much as I don't want to hear that. We all remember in the second half of the Anaheim series, Anaheim came back and made it a 7-game series. Chicago came back from a 3-1 deficit and made it a 7-game series. New Jersey, 2 years ago, came back from a 3-0 deficit and made it a 6-game series. Darryl Sutter has to get his team into that killer instinct mind frame. They've got the me against the world thing down pat, almost to the point where it's genius, becoming the first team in NHL history to win 3 straight games in overtime in the Stanley Cup playoffs. If they don't have that killer instinct going into Game 4, that ability to close this series out, and it goes to a Game 5 or even a Game 6 back to MSG and potentially a Game 7 back in LA, fatigue could start setting in because I don't know about you guys, but cross-country travel and jet lag, playing for 60, 75 minutes, that could wear and tear on people. Obviously, there's some fatigue there. But last night, I admit, I was still kind of skeptical about who I was thinking was going to be a Conn Smythe winner. Jonathan Quick, Marion Gabbert, Drew Doughty, Jeff Carter even. Jonathan Quick emerged as Conn Smythe Trophy winner with a 32-save performance last night. I mean, just unreal. Standing on his head, splits, the save on Zuccarello in the first, split eagle with the paddle out. I mean, I tried that when that went to a commercial break. I got out of my chair with my mom, and I tried to do that. I swear I think I ripped myself in half. I don't know how I'm sitting here today. The guy has ridiculous athleticism and is my vote for Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah, right now, I don't think I'm going to lean towards Quick just because of the statistical reasons, and there are a lot of games where he, certainly he makes the big saves when it counts. Nobody's going to argue that. However, it's about the body of work over the playoffs, and I think because of that, they're going to give it to the leading scorer on the LA Kings, and I think Marian Gaborik has really been a guy that, was such a clutch pickup at the trade deadline from Columbus that they just plugged him in there right with Anze Kopitar, and that's a perfect pairing right there. Almost on the same level of, you see like Getzlaf and Perry, you see Milan Lucic, David Krejci, and then Bergeron and Marchand over in Boston. I mean, just guys that you pair together. Who's that?
Ovechkin Backstrom.
Ovechkin Backstrom, exactly. But Gaborik and Kopitar and Dustin Brown on that first line, absolutely amazing. And I think Kopitar and Brown are both guys that have been, right there for the Kings. But maybe Kelvin, you'll agree with me when we sing it over here. But I think that's what's wonderful about the Kings is that you can't pick out one guy that you can definitively say this guy has been the most valuable player to this team throughout the whole playoffs.
Exactly. I mean, it's been a whole team effort from LA. I mean, it's a different player every night. Seems to be stepping up into that star role every night. It's somebody different. It's Doughty one night, Dustin Brown, the guy who won it, Martinez, I believe it was, in Game 7 against Chicago.
Yep.
And then you had, last night you had Jonathan Quick stand on his head in probably the most famous arena in all of North America, MSG, stood on his head, lights out. I believe he had 2 of the top 10, and I believe he had 2 of the top 10 highlights on SportsCenter last night, which, when do you see that from a hockey guy? You never see it.
Only when John Butchcroft and Steve Levy are anchoring.
Shout out to Bushy, man. I love you, man.
He's gotten a lot of work last playoffs with that overtime challenge. He's got a lot of work and a lot of T-shirts handed out.
And okay, but back to on Diamond Kings this week. Last week I picked the Rangers to win it in 6, and that can no longer happen. So I'm kind of disappointed. And I picked that because of Martin St. Louis' mother passing away. I just thought this team would rally around that one more time in one more series, and it just has not panned out. And after the puck dropped in Game 1, I Facebooked Michael after that show ended, and I was like, Rangers can't play this way for 7 games and expect to win the series. And it's panned out. The speed that the Rangers have it's going to be their downfall. With the size and quickness, like size and ability of the Kings defense, it's not going to work.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will say this to kind of, I don't know, piggyback off of what Kelvin's saying in a way. Had it not been for Jonathan Quick and some really unlucky, I kind of feel bad for Henrik Lundqvist, even though I'm pulling against him. He's waited 9 years to get here. The last goalie to start a game in the playoffs for the New York Rangers that wasn't named Henrik Lundqvist, Kevin Weeks, back in 2006. He's waited 9 years. 3 unlucky breaks. A puck bouncing off of, I think it was either Dan Girardi or Kevin Klein's skate with 0.7 seconds to go. That was a moment from Jeff Carter in the first period. Then you have a puck glance off of Martin St. Louis' glove when he goes down to block the shot on Muzzin's power play goal. Then on a 2-on-1, and Alain Vigneault mentioned this last night during his press conference, on a 2-on-1, they played it perfectly. You play the pass perfectly. It bounces back to Mike Richards, who pops one in for his third of the playoffs. Really unlucky breaks last night, coupled with the fact that Jonathan Quick was out of his mind good last night. I mean, just ridiculous. The first time the guy has ever played in Madison Square Garden, in the most famous arena in North America, in arguably one of the loudest buildings in North America, and he steals the show. I mean, LA could not have played a more perfect game last night at 5-on-5. But give credit to Matt Zuccarello. This entire series, Matt Zuccarello has been the New York Rangers' best player, taking 2 penalties against Willie Mitchell, who's arguably one of the best penalty killers on this LA Kings team. The speed is there. The Rangers are beating the Kings in the speed department. Justin Williams himself said, "We did not expect their speed after their Game 1 win." The breaks aren't there, but if the New York Rangers keep playing their game, it's bound to happen. They're going to get some breaks.
Yes,
I'm not saying that it's going to happen, in the near future, and they win, but it's bound to happen. There's going to be a break somewhere.
Yeah, I think for the Rangers, I think they will win Game 4 just because, like you said, Michael, the breaks are bound to go their way, at least for one game in the series, and then I think that would be pretty poetic for the Kings to take it back home to Staples Center, win at home in Game 5. I think for the Rangers, at least what they can take out of this series is that the Rangers are most certainly the young team in this series. Yeah, they have a lot of old guys. They got Brad Richards, who maybe he's gone after this year. You look at Martin St. Louis,
Dominic Moore, Brian Boyle, a former King. It's.
But you look at the young talent they still have. They have Ryan McDonough on the back end. You look at Stepan, Kreider, Zuccarello, Brassard, even deeper guys like Benoit Pouliot at forward. I mean, this is still a team that has a lot of young talent, and Lundqvist is still in his early 30s, so they still have a couple years to go.
I think Pouliot's been in the league like 10 years now, right?
Yeah, Pouliot was a guy that was drafted.
He was 6th overall pick back in 2004 or something out of Columbus, and
he's bounced around a lot of Minnesota. I'm gonna say, I think it was Minnesota.
Yeah, he was in Minnesota for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then,
but he's a guy that's bounced around the league, bounced around the AHL, NHL, all over the place, and now he's starting to find a place as a bottom 6 guy. I think the Rangers are certainly a very good team, and I think they're going to be, top 5, top 6 contender for the East for another 2 or 3 years. But it's clear to me that the Kings are absolutely the more favored team going in, and they're showing why in this series. I think another thing I want to say on the Kings as well is that there's a lot of stuff with the analytics movement going on right now in hockey. I think I've said this before on the show. The Kings, every time I watch them, it's just amazing to me. It's almost like an art form because they literally never freak out. They always are just completely calm no matter how bad it goes. They go down, which is why they were able to come back in games 1 and 2. They have more poise than any hockey team I've seen in my probably 15 years of watching the game right now. They're so calm with the puck, and they never get rattled down 2 goals. And that is something that's absolutely astonishing, but that's something you absolutely need if you're going to go and win the Stanley Cup. And I think the Kings, hands down, deserve it this year, down the top of their roster. I don't think there's a team deeper down the center in the NHL ever since they split up Mike Richards and Jeff Carter from the same line. Carter, that line of Tanner Pearson and Tyler Toffoli has been so clutch throughout all these playoffs. Jarrett Stoll grinding it out. Mike Richards playing with Dwight King and Justin Williams. That's been
on the 4th line.
Yeah, exactly.
Ridiculous.
Yes. The Kings are, and Jake Muzzin picked up another power play goal, his 6th of the playoffs right now. I mean, he's a guy. The Kings, and they have more coming up too. The Kings are just so strong organizationally that they don't get nearly the respect that teams like Boston or Pittsburgh do in the East. But I would even put LA higher than Chicago or any of them, and I feel really bad for counting them out at the start of the postseason against San Jose, because you get one break here, they're not there in the Stanley Cup. But the Kings are absolutely the best team in the NHL, and they're going to be rewarded for their efforts in winning the Stanley Cup this year, I think.
The only thing that I would say that they need, a little bit more of is goaltending depth. I mean, aside from Jonathan Quick, yeah, you've got Martin Jones. But down in the pipeline, there's nobody. You drafted a guy named Chris Gibson out of Chickadee, I think it was 3 years ago. Never signed him. 2nd-round pick, you never signed the guy. He's in the Toronto system right now or something. In fact, I think he might have just bolted to Europe, which I don't blame the guy. The guy's half finished.
Yeah.
There's John Francois Berube, not bad, but AHL backup at best. I think that was once you traded Ben Scrivens and called up Martin Jones. There's little depth down there. I mean, yeah, you got a guy named I take it back. You had a guy named Mats Niederberger down there, who was a very Colts product, German-born guy, good player. Actually, just bolted back to Berlin to play with the famed Eisbär and Berlin Polar Bears in the DEL. So they need some goaltending depth. Maybe that's something they address in the draft. If Thatcher Demko's there out of Boston College, Alexander Nedeljkovic from Plymouth. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself, guys. We may have to save that for down the road here a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get into the draft talk. We'll table that for a little while. We're going to take a step back from the Stanley Cup because there's still a lot of action going on with the other 28 teams in the NHL. But the one that's most notable that everybody wants to talk about right now is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Because after their second-round loss to the Rangers, they are going about quite an organizational shakeup. Ray Shero, general manager, was fired a couple weeks ago. And Dan Bylsma, head coach, was just fired by new general manager Jim Rutherford, who was just hired after stepping down from the general manager role with the Carolina Hurricanes, where he was there for 20 years, going all the way back to the Hartford Whalers days. Rutherford was so integral in building up that Carolina team, and they won a Stanley Cup back in 2006 with Peter Laviolette, and that's a very solid team. So, it was a solid team back in 2006. He was a young Eric Stahl back then. And Justin Williams was on that team as well, and now he's out winning cups with the Kings. But Rutherford certainly has his work cut out for him because I think the Penguins really need to do a better job than what Shero did of putting a supporting cast around Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And I think the head coach that comes in, whoever that is, needs to do a much better job of juggling lines and making sure there's the right depth and all that stuff. Because, playing Lee Stempniak, Pascal Dupuis with Sidney Crosby, yeah, there's the chemistry, but you can certainly do a lot better than that, I think. So we'll start with Kelvin on this one. What do you think of Rutherford's hiring in Pittsburgh, and do you think it was the right move for them?
Well, I was just shocked when I heard that Rutherford got hired there because everything I've been reading out of Pittsburgh and hearing from MSNBC and all that stuff was that Pierre LeBrun was going to be the guy. He was in the contract negotiations with Pittsburgh to be the new GM. He was working on getting out of his contract with NBC Sports.
Oh, Pierre McGuire.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I was going to say, Pierre LeBrun, the writer? Really? Whoa.
Yeah, that's what
I didn't even catch that. Thank you, Michael.
By the way, shout out to Pierre LeBrun, dude. You do some good work.
He really does.
But, yeah, I thought McGuire was going to be – he was working on getting his contract situated. He was in negotiations from everything I was reading out of Pittsburgh. And then my phone goes off, and it's Rutherford. Can't even talk right now. It's Rutherford going to be the GM in Pittsburgh. I'm like, oh, that's probably the brighter decision that Pittsburgh's made right there.
Yeah.
Signing him to the GM. I was like, so I'm happy. I like it. As far as the head coaching position, I don't know who they bring in. Do you promote your AHL coach to give him a shot? Do you let him crack in at it? Because I believe their AHL team isn't that bad. I believe they were in the playoffs this year, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, the Wolfsburg Penguins have been real good.
Finals.
Yeah, they've been real good for a while.
They were eliminated by the same Ice Caps.
Do you give him a shot like Buffalo did with Ron Rolston? Do you give him a shot? I think you do. I think you sign him to a 3-year deal, let him come up, coach a team, see what he can do. But they definitely have to put a supporting cast around Sidney Crosby again. They need to address their goaltending situation. Like I said this before, Fleury is a great regular season goaltender, but when it comes to the postseason, I don't know what demons this guy has haunting him in the postseason or what he did to the hockey gods when it comes to goaltending. It just falls apart for him in the postseason. I don't know if it's nerves, butterflies, just facing that great of a talent for possible 7 games every other day, or what it is. It's something's got to be done in the goaltending situation. Letang has got to get healthy. He's got to stay on the ice, and so does Malkin. Malkin's got to stay on the ice, but they need to build their lines up like LA does. They got the talent to start with, but they got to get deep.
Yeah, certainly. And Rutherford's certainly going to be familiar with Brandon Sutter, the third-line center on Pittsburgh, who was the centerpiece of the Jordan Staal deal. I think defensive depth is certainly going to be something to address because the defenseman for Pittsburgh, Oli Mata, is getting off-season shoulder surgery, and Derek Pouliot, another prospect who they thought maybe could challenge for a spot on the NHL roster, he's getting shoulder surgery as well. And with Letang recovering from his stroke, I think that certainly opens the door for bringing in some more depth players through free agency that they're going to need to do. They have a solid core of veterans between Paul Martin and Matt Niskanen and Letang that I think they have the foundation ready. So I don't think they need to make any drastic changes unless maybe Rutherford decides to trade Letang in an effort to clear cap space to make more room up front to help out Crosby and Malkin. I think it's certainly going to be a very curious case, and I'm actually really surprised because Ray Sherrill's assistant GM, Jason Botterill, was considered for a lot of general manager jobs out there, got a lot of interviews, and then they decided to go external to hire the new Pittsburgh general manager, which kind of was surprising to me. I thought Botterill was going to be the guy, but it turns out they really wanted to make a change of pace at the top. And, props to Mario Lemieux going out there and getting, who he thought, Rutherford has a great track record as a general manager, so certainly I don't think you can say it's a bad hire. It's certainly surprising. But it will be interesting to see where the Penguins go from here in terms of how they're going to draft, whether they're going to lean more on the initial draft boards that Sherrill put together, or if Rutherford's going to come in and have a little bit more of a hand there. Maybe they go for a goalie like Thatcher Demko out of Boston College in the first round. But we'll have to see what happens there. On the flip side now, with the head coach, you've got Dan Bylsma, who got fired after a little more than 5 years as the Pittsburgh head coach. Had a ton of success there, but now he's out on the open market. It seems like the front runner for him right now is Florida. Harvey Fialkov, the Panthers beat writer from the Florida Sun-Sentinel, is reporting that Dan Bylsma is going to be meeting with the Florida Brain Trust, including Dale Talon, their general manager, and the owners sometime today or Wednesday. And there's going to be 5 other candidates interviewing there as well that have not been identified thus far. So Florida certainly, is a team that's been kind of like Edmonton, perpetually rebuilding for so long now. And they also have the first overall pick. So this is a team that, if you bring in a star coach like Danny Bylsma, I think that's a team that could turn around real quickly. Vancouver is also the other place that Bylsma has been connected to. Vancouver kind of trying to make a lot of changes with Trevor Linden now as team president, and Jim Benning, the new general manager, coming over from Boston. Kelvin, we'll start with you on this one, man. Where do you think Bylsma ends up here?
I think he ends up in Florida. That's the lead runner. They're just saying they're bringing in 5 other guys, but who are the 5 other guys? If they're not willing to name off who they are, they can't be really anybody that they're interested in if they can't openly say who it is. Maybe you bring in John Tortorella as somebody who's already coached down there, and you bring him back. But I think Bylsma ends up in Florida. If he doesn't go to Florida, he ends up in Vancouver, and Vancouver could quickly turn it around as well, because Vancouver just needs a little bit more help when it comes to the defensive and goaltending side, and Bylsma can turn that around in a hurry.
Yeah, Bylsma in Vancouver would certainly be a guy that could potentially convince Ryan Kessler to stay if they think they're going to win real soon. So that would be a big coup for them if they can lure him away from Florida. But I think Bylsma would certainly be a great fit in Florida if they bring in Aaron Ekblad at defense to give them that cornerstone guy. They've got tons of young talent. You got Jonathan Huberdeau, Alex Barkov, Nick Bugstad, the list goes on and on and on. And Michael, I think Bylsma in Florida would be a really good fit. Do you think that's what's best for him as well?
Well, yeah, I think that would work out too. But a real quick just to backtrack just a little bit on the Rutherford deal. I was kind of confused myself when Jim came in. I was actually just happy that they didn't hire Pierre Maguire because I don't know if you guys ever look back into why Pierre Maguire never worked out as the coach. Patty Verbeek, yes, the Patty Verbeek. I'm pretty sure he's the Stanley Cup champion when he won it with. I think he was on that Dallas team in '99 that I know broke you guys' hearts, sadly. But when Patty Verbeek himself says that firing Pierre Maguire was the greatest thing to ever happen to that team because all other teams mocked not only the Whalers themselves, but their coach, something's got to give. I mean, that was awful. I can't believe that they were even considering bringing him in. Obviously, Rutherford's got to do a better job than he did in Carolina with this Pittsburgh team. I mean, yeah, he's had arguably more talent here in Pittsburgh now, but more has to be done. I mean, you can't just, do what you did to Carolina. You kind of ran Carolina into the ground a little bit. I don't want to say that was all your fault, but I'm sure Mario Lemieux talked to Ron Francis. Mario Lemieux knows what he's getting, and Mario Lemieux and Ron Francis, they're kind of close. I don't know if you guys remember that or not. They were kind of close. But yeah, if you bring Dan Bylsma down to Miami and Florida, not only are you bringing a Stanley Cup winning coach to a very small market, a market that hasn't seen the playoffs since, I don't know, 2002 or 3 when Pablo Bure was.
They won the Southeast one year. I think it was.
I thought it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, but nobody remembers
other than that. Yeah, exactly. They got swept down the first round by Washington, I want to say.
Yeah.
No, it was New Jersey actually, but
Jersey.
I didn't even remember that. But I mean, who hasn't seen real? Let's go back. Who hasn't seen real playoff success since maybe even Pavel Bure, or even go back to their expansion year with Johan? Yes, I'm dropping Johan Garpenlov into the ATR name.
Garpenlov.
One of the greatest names in NHL history when they got swept by Colorado. This team needs a jump. I mean, they need something. They've got young talent, like we were saying, Jonathan Huberdeau, Nick Bjugstad, Eric Goodbranson, who I love Eric Goodbranson. I mean, the kid, big, strong guy. He's got a boomer from the point. Pairing him with Dmitry Kulikov would be is a foreseeable thing in the future. And they need a veteran presence down there and consistency. I mean, this is the fourth coach they've been looking for in 5 years down there in Florida or something like that. I mean, there's been no consistent anything down there. You had a guy like Chris Versteeg, who was going to be your 20 to 25 guy, arguably could be the leader of that team, in goal scoring, and then you get rid of it. There's consistency is needed down there in Florida. I don't know how much I can stress that. You've got a guy like Roberto Luongo down there. You've got a young core in front of him. You need a veteran coach that says, hey, I've been here before, this is what we're going to do. And maybe, Rutherford does promote John Hines, who is the coach in Wilkes-Barre, after, what was the guy's name? Todd something. He was now an assistant with Dan Bylsma, who I'm not even sure is, even still on the team anymore. But you know what? Why not give John Hines some credit? Maybe you bring in Guy Boucher, looking for a job. Also could be a guy in Vancouver. He's another guy that with that trap system that he employed down in Tampa Bay, that gave some teams some serious fits. He's looking for a job, guys. I'm pretty sure he wants to come back across the pond. Maybe that's one of those 5 names that Florida was thinking, but Florida wouldn't, do something that Washington didn't do and offer Dan Bylsma a contract. I'm still bitter about that.
Yeah. Florida is certainly a team that has a lot of room to grow, and I think Bylsma would be a fantastic coach to fit there, and kind of give a team that really hasn't seen a lot of success some success. They have Roberto Luongo in net now, so there's a little bit of consistency there, or at least as much as if not more than what you would have with Marc-Andre Fleury in Pittsburgh. I think they certainly have a lot of the young tools. And personally, I'm kind of surprised that Dale Talon kept his job as general manager there, because he's had 5 or so years after coming over from building those first Chicago teams, leading them out of the dog days with John Taves and Patrick Kane. But I think you have to believe that Dale Talon's on his last legs too. So bringing in a coach like Danny Bylsma, would certainly give him some longevity in terms of his career with Florida as well, and give them some sort of legitimacy in that Atlantic Conference. With the realignment there now, Florida and Tampa Bay are playing in the same conference as teams like Boston, teams like Montreal. Buffalo's going to be coming up sooner or later in the next 3 years or so. There's going to be a lot of challenges for Florida coming up. But I think if they bring in a coach like Dan Bylsma, that immediately legitimizes them and gives them a real solid playoff chance, even especially in the Eastern Conference here.
And if not now, in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Florida's certainly a team that has their best days ahead of them. I don't think there's any question about that. This isn't a team that has a bunch of guys in their prime now and they're going to be on their downswing. All the top guys on this team are 19, 20, 21, 22, and they're going to bring in another 18-year-old at first overall this year unless they trade down. But certainly Florida is a team on the rise. And if Bylsma does go to Vancouver, it's not like the cupboard's totally empty there. He's going to have 3 more years of the teens. He'll probably be able to keep Kessler, I would guess. And then he's got a really good defensive core. The only problem there is that you've got 2 Swedish goalies in Eddie Lack and Jakob Markstrom who haven't proven much of anything. They're big, long, athletic guys that have all the tools to be good goaltenders. But I think there's a lot of issues in Vancouver that need to be worked out by Jim Benning and his staff. That whatever coach there, I don't think is going to be successful over the next 3 years.
Not only that, but their cupboard is bare down there in Vancouver. I mean, all they've got really to look forward to that's anything close to NHL ready is Nick Jensen, the Danish product from, I think it was like the 09 draft class. I mean, yes, you've got Bo Horvat, but Bo Horvat's still, 3 years away. I mean, if that. He may even be 4. You might need a year of AHL time to, to get up to speed. I mean, he's still, a smaller guy. So there's obviously that right there going. But, yeah, the cupboard's bare in Vancouver. Florida, they're just, teeming with young guys.
Yeah, Bo Horvat and Hunter Shinkaruk, the 2013
I always forget
draft
Hunter Shinkaruk.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly seems to me like Florida would be the better situation for Bylsma. I don't know if you disagree, Calvin. I think you were agreeing for the most part.
No, I think that's where he ends up.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to move on here because we're over here at Around the Rink. We're getting really excited because all of our teams are eliminated right here between the 3 writers. So we're getting ready for the NHL draft. And we're working together on putting together a special draft edition podcast for you guys. We'll get our legendary site manager, Aaron Morace, going on here. Shout out to Aaron out in the working world. But we're gonna talk a little bit NHL draft. We're gonna go through the line. We're just gonna all talk about a couple prospects we like here, and guys that we think could impact big time in the NHL. Maybe a little sooner than you expect. We'll start with Michael. Draft rant. Time to go.
Well, if I am newly appointed Washington Capitals general manager Brian McClellan, which that's still kind of hard for me to say. Which I probably should start calling him General Manager George McPhee 2.0, but we'll save that for another.
You already started with that before the show.
Yeah, we'll save that for another one. Hayden Fleury is definitely a guy you need to be looking at, Brian. I mean, the guy is playing a solid two-way. He plays a solid two-way game. Definitely something that Washington has not had in a long time. Any sort of aside from John Carlson and Carl Alsner and Mike Green like 4 years ago, there has really been nothing in that back end. I mean, I said it countless times during the season, you can't have a goalie stop or face 51 shots, stop 49 of them, and think you're going to win night after night. You can't do that. Fleury's going to be a guy. He may take a couple years to get into the NHL, but he's definitely going to be a guy with a high upside. Great, shot from the point. Is smart, high hockey IQ, which is always a big thing when you're playing defense. But I really want to go ahead and start talking about Michael Del Calle. I have been raving about Michael Del Calle from the Kitchener Rangers probably since mid-September. I don't know if you want to call it a hockey man crush, but the kid can flat out play. Big kid. He's already, I think he's like 6'2", 215, and he's like 18 years old.
Del Coley?
Yeah, he's
Del Coley's
he's
a little
175. Is he 175 now?
Yeah, Del Coley's the smaller dude.
He's projected to be in the 215, 220 range. Think Jason Spezza on a wing, and he's a better passer. The kid's outstanding. Kitchener kind of underachieved this year, but he was arguably the lone bright spot. Definitely a top 10 pick. Arguably could even sneak his way into the top 5. Unreal. I think I've seen some mock drafts have him going to the island. And if you're able to pair him with a John Tavares and whoever you guys are able to put there, with Johnny T. I mean, because arguably it's Johnny T right now, and everybody's still waiting for Ryan Strome. That definitely has a making right there of something good going on Long Island, which we have not had the ability to say, especially after Garth Snow's Thomas Vanek debacle. That was, we all said that ourselves, like that was just ridiculous. But yeah, definitely watch out for Michael Del Coley. If I'm going to throw out another, like I was saying earlier, Thatcher Demko from Boston College, Alexander Nedeljkovic from Plymouth could be a definite. If there are a couple teams looking for goaltender help. Arguably, like we were saying, of course, L.A. Needing some depth. New Jersey even with that sneaky end of the round compensatory pick, which is just complete and total crap. Arguably, obviously they're going to need somebody to back up Corey Schneider here within the next couple of years. I don't think Keith Kincaid is going to be that guy. Minnesota definitely is going to need something. They did say that Josh Harding is expected to be back by camp. Nick Backstrom, of course, has been injured. Yes, you have Darcy Kemper. Are you going to keep Ilya Brizgalov? That's a big question. Pittsburgh's going to need some defense. Matt Niskanen's an unrestricted free agent this year, so there's talks of maybe him hitting the open market. I think he's looking at either 3 or 4 years, depending on who's asking. If he hits the open market, it might be 4. Which, by the way, Brian McClellan, if you're listening, try to get that guy. Just saying.
Solid. Alrighty, Kelvin. We'll swing it over to you, man. Take your swing at the draft.
I'm working on a mock draft, 30-team mock draft. I'm up to 19 and 20 in my draft right now, and number 19 I have Julius Honka going, number 19 overall.
Love that kid.
This kid at 16 goals and 40 assists this year for. It's pretty crazy. He's a skilled. He's agile. He's undersized for a defenseman in the NHL. He's only 5'10" and 2.5 inches tall. So he's undersized, but what he lacks in size, he makes up for with his vision up ice, and he probably has the best vision in the whole class, like up ice vision when he handles the puck. He's modeled off of an Erik Karlsson type deal up in Ottawa. So it's he's pretty solid there. He also this year with Finland won the gold medal. He was one of the key players and key reasons they won it was because of him. And then number 20, I have Robbie Farby going, and he's also 5'10", 2.5 inches tall. He's undersized, but he's talented. In the postseason, the OHL playoffs this year, the MVP, he had 28 points, 13 goals, 15 assists. I mean, he's undersized, yes, and going up against bigger NHL defensemen is going to be the thing. But we've seen it. If you can handle the puck and you're quick and agile like he is, you can get through and get by these bigger defensemen. And if that happens, he has the talent to be a game-breaking scorer in the NHL, and it's just crazy. I wish Buffalo could trade it, try to get a second pick in the draft in the first round and pick this guy up, which we have found out from Murray is a possibility of Buffalo trading up into the back into the first round with all the draft picks they have and all the players that they could potentially dump, is that we could trade back up into the first round and pick this up now that we don't have that second first round pick from St. Louis and the Islanders. So I really would like to see him in Buffalo, but at the same time I could see Julius Honka going to Buffalo too if we traded back up into the first round after our second overall pick.
Yeah, pairing a couple finished defensemen together, you put Honka and Ristolainen in the same roster, I think that would certainly be good. I think the considerations for Buffalo at number 2 right now is basically anybody. I honestly wouldn't count Ekblad out if he is there at 2. Tim Murray has certainly said that he's the best player available kind of guy. But I think what the Sabres need most right now is a two-way, kind of center, a guy that's like a Patrice Bergeron type with Boston, which is exactly who Sam Reinhart's been compared to. And that's why I think he's going to be the pick at number 2. I think
who I have at number 2.
I think my overall favorite player in this draft is Leon Draisaitl, Prince Albert forward, German-born, 6'1", 210 pounds. He's a guy that kind of slid a little bit this year due to some inconsistency, but he is a big, powerful winger with a monster shot. The one NHL player I've heard him compared to is Jaromir Jagr, a little bit smaller, but kind of right along the same. I think if you're the Edmonton Oilers at pick 3, and you have so many, sniping forwards like Nugent Hopkins, Hall, Eberle, Gagne, but they don't have the size up front. So I think Draisaitl is an absolute slam dunk pick for Edmonton at number 3 right there. They've got the defensive depth now in their roster in terms of prospects. You look at guys like Martin Marincin, Oscar Ekblom, I think. Something like that.
Oscar Philip Larson.
Philip Larson, Darnell Nurse, their first rounder from last year. They have the defense. They just need to add size. They need to add size if they're going to be competitive. You saw the trade for Matt Hendricks last year. I think that worked out really well for Edmonton. They've got the goaltending right. They just need to add size up front. I think Draisaitl's a guy that can plug in from day one on that second line there, put him with Gagne, and he's going to be a stud right there.
And Draisaitl's a guy who can also move into the center position. I've actually heard him compared to Andrzej Kopitar. I don't know if he's as defensively gifted as Kopitar, but he's definitely got the offensive skill to it. And I love the fact that Kelvin brought up Robbie Fabry. Robbie Fabry is one of those guys that he's definitely got helium right now. He's moving up a lot of people's draft boards. Do not be surprised if he sneaks into the top 10. I've actually seen ISS, which is like it's another scouting agency, second only to obviously NHL Central Scouting. They've actually had him in the top 12. He's been that high of a riser ever since the OHL playoffs. Think Rene Bourque with more of a scoring touch. Obviously Rene Bourque did okay for himself in Calgary and Montreal. Fabry's just a little bit better.
Yeah, certainly. Fabry and Kevin Fiala, I think at forward, are the two guys that have risen the most in terms of going from the midterm ranking to the final ranking. Mm-hmm. And I think as I'm doing this draft stuff, another guy that stands out the most to me, you look at guys, on these Stanley Cup teams, you're looking for those second to third line forwards, guys that have size but are still skilled with the puck, and they're going to help you win possession. The guy I think that's going to really help a team in that middle rounds, or in the middle picks in this first round, is Dylan Larkin, American forward, going to University of Michigan next year. He's 6'1", 190. Was an assistant captain on Team USA's gold medal winning club at the 2014 Under-18s. He's just a real solid player. He's a guy that's a two-way center. He's going to get to develop his game with a pretty similar player in Sabres prospect JT Compher at Michigan, who just won that team's Rookie of the Year. I think he's a guy that's really going to come in, and I think he's a guy we see on a championship team in 5 years from now. Lifting the Stanley Cup. I think this draft is certainly going to be impressive, and over at Around the Rink, we're going to be getting into it more in the coming weeks. But I don't think, as we were saying before this, the 2003 draft comparisons are starting to kind of fade a little bit. But this is still a very good draft where there's 6 or 7 really good prospects up at the top, and then from there down into the middle of the second round, there's really not a lot of difference in terms of the ceilings of these prospects. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement at this draft in terms of picks going up and down and teams trading players for picks because there's so much talent. But like we said, Kelvin's got a mock draft going. I'm going to be starting one up soon. We're going to have a lot of draft content coming up soon at Around the Rink. Again, the URL for that you'll see right here. We got sports-kings.com. Just add a / around the rink at the end, and you'll be right on our website. Everyone, we want to thank you for tuning in because we love our hockey fans. And Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Kings at Rangers, is Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Signing off for this episode of the show. I'm Joe.
I'm Mike. That's Kelvin.
That's Kelvin. A little Yarmer Yager salute. Thanks for tuning in, guys.